The Ordinary Discussion Podcast.
I was in the first wave, and so I went down to our lower camp at 19,000 feet, which was on the edge of a 600-foot cliff. And when I got to that camp, something happened. I stepped on a rock, it moved under my feet, and it sent me down that 600-foot cliff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Ordinary Discussions Podcast. We're so excited you're with us. We have an amazing guest with us today. Not only have they been an OM participant, but they have reached some incredible heights, and I can't wait to have them share with you. I can't say any more. I got to leave it at that. But before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys to like and subscribe and share the podcast. Help us grow. You can rate us on Spotify and YouTube or anywhere that you're listening. That helps us get the word out about this movement that we call Ordinary Movement, Disciples Making Disciples. So if this has been blessing you, you've been listening in, help us to reach others by sharing it. And I just can't wait to share with you guys today.
All right, let's do this. Aaron, do you want to introduce our amazing guest today?
I'm so excited to introduce our guest that we have today. Today we have with us Eric Alexander, and he has been a pioneer and an advocate for people with disabilities. He's climbed some of the world's highest and most daunting peaks with people who have had disabilities. He has had a multi-record setting team, and some of the things that he's accomplished have been described by, get this, Time magazine as the greatest team in history to climb Everest. That's right, I said Mount Everest. So this ascent has ranked among its top 5 climbs ever by the Outside magazine. Things he has faced. Listen to this, guys. He's pushed through his own fears, his doubts, flaws, pneumonia. It looks like tragic loss. There's so much to unpack with our guests. We're so blessed to have you with us, Eric. Thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Hey, it's great to be with you. Thanks for your kind introduction. Nice to be with you, Jeremy, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I told Aaron today as we were talking about the podcast how excited I am that we get to have you in studio. And I mean, what a special guest you are. I really appreciate you being on and talking through your journey. Eric has written a book, The Summit. And what is the subtitle? Faith Beyond Everest's Death Zone. Crazy good book. I picked it up this week, and I didn't want to put it down. I would encourage you, after you listen to what he has to say, you'll probably want to pick it up as well. And then get that on Amazon.
It's like $2 on Amazon, I think.
Oh, come on. We need to up the price.
Yeah.
After this podcast, we'll up the price.
Get it used. It's going to skyrocket.
It's going to skyrocket.
Yeah, won't be able to find it.
Yeah.
You're sold out. Yeah.
Totally.
But as Aaron said, you have climbed many very high peaks. In fact, 6 of the highest peaks out of the 7 continents, right?
That's right.
And you never went back and did the 7th? What is the 7th?
The 7th for me is down in Antarctica. It's Mount Vinson. It's only 16,000 feet high. But I never wanted to do the 7 summits.
Really?
That was never my goal.
Yeah.
In fact, Everest was my first.
Everest was first?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And I thought, maybe I'll climb Kilimanjaro someday. That'd be fun. Or Denali just seems like an interesting mountain.
Yeah.
But I got invited by Eric, my blind buddy, to go climb Everest, and that came up first. And then just with him, we started doing others, and before you know it, I had 4 of the 7 and then 5. And so that 7th, it's like, maybe it'd be cool to go to Antarctica, but it's like 30 to 50 grand per person just to go down there.
I thought you were going to say 30 to 50 below zero, and I was thinking,
that too.
I don't really want to go to Antarctica.
Yeah, you pay $1,000 for every degree below zero.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
I've been able to climb 6 of the 7 and bring a friend or a person with a disability to the summit of each, and that's made the trip more interesting and maybe more unique in terms of my story.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. So I have so many questions for you, and bear with me. We're probably going to jump around. Obviously, the climax of this whole thing is the pinnacle, which is Everest, right? But there's so much around that. So you were the first person to ever climb to bring guide a blind person to the top, right?
Yeah.
Has it been done since?
It has.
It has?
Yep. Austrian guy named Andy Holzer,
Okay.
who's friends with Eric, a bit younger, but he went up the north side.
Okay.
And we tease each other, that's the easy side.
Oh, there's two sides up Everest.
Yeah, well, there's many. So you can go up the north face, you can go up the north ridge, the southwest ridge, like we did. You can go up the Kangshung face. There's a number of different routes.
Oh.
The west ridge, they get more complicated, but the two main are the south and the north.
And why would somebody choose one over the other?
Cost is one reason. The Khumbu icefall, avoiding that is another reason.
That sounds like something you should avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
Well, you should see a picture of it. I mean, the picture of that thing is like,
there should be one in there. The Jesus ladder. My teammate Jeff crossing over that. We nicknamed it that because it was the first word out of his mouth when he stepped on the ladder.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we're going to get back to a lot of this, but
yeah,
the disabilities. So what attracted you to? Because I mean, we're talking 6 of the 7 highest summits. I mean, you brought a group of 16-year-old blind kids. Was that?
Yeah,
up,
on a trek through Peru to Machu Picchu.
Yeah,
we did a couple of different treks down there at different times. I'm a Colorado guy. I grew up here climbing and skiing, and my youth group in high school was really that was the ladder crossing.
Yeah.
Was really special to me, and my leaders were very outdoor oriented and experienced men of God, and so they had a huge influence on my life. And I guess part of what I want to do is be able to share my experiences and my expertise with kids who may not otherwise get that opportunity.
Yeah, but that's a real gift you have. I mean, it takes a lot of dying to self in that. No, you would say it's not.
I would say it's not, because great people who are exploring their limits, and then you get to go to great, beautiful places. So I don't really see that as dying to self or, being selfless or sacrificial so much. Going to Machu Picchu and getting to encourage someone along the way.
But I saw a short video of those kids coming down Machu Picchu. Am I saying it right? Mm-hmm. I'll mess up. These words there's a lot of hard words. I'll just let you say
Sure.
But they're literally, like step after step after step, these blind kids. I mean, I don't understand. How many were there?
Hundreds, over the trip, it was 7 days, 35 miles. You're with these kids every step of the way.
How many kids were there?
Oh, how many kids? We had 9 blind kids and 9 sighted kids as their leads.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But, it's exhausting. You go up, we went up to about 15,000 feet at one point over a high mountain pass. The kids are encouraged to train and exercise beforehand, but some of them don't really get to it. And so they're pretty wiped out, and you're trying to encourage them over the next pass, to get to camp and make it to mealtime for some guinea pig and
for guinea pig. Yeah. Oh, nice. Sounds excellent.
Nice roast guinea pig to welcome you to camp.
But you ever had guinea pig, Aaron?
I have not. I don't really plan on that unless that's like an exclusive, you have to do that if you're going to climb sort of thing. I don't really belong on the mountains. I feel like I would also not do the homework that you gave me to prepare for the hike, because I went to Colorado for the first time and all I did was hike up like 1 mile, and the altitude change was enough for me to be like, I'm going to go back down now and take a nap. So that is crazy. Do you say that originally the way you got started with that is that your blind friend Eric invited you to climb Mount Everest?
Yes, that's right. Yep. We had met a couple of years before that, and so we had been out and we'd done some backpacking, some technical climbing, ice and rock, and we were on Capitol Peak here in Colorado, which is a 14,000 foot peak. It was August, and our ascent got thwarted by a snowstorm. And so we turned around, but it was on our way down that Eric said, hey, I've got this trip going to Everest, and before we go there, we're going to do another climb for training. And, maybe I can put in a good word for you to the team organizer and the team lead and see if we can get you on the team to go to Everest. And So I was trying to play it cool at that point, like, yeah, maybe I could go. Meanwhile, my heart's pounding out of my chest. I didn't want to seem overly eager. But it was Eric who kind of came up with the idea, and he put or at least half of the team together. And so I was invited by him to be a part of it.
So that's interesting, because I feel like when I've heard about climbing Mount Everest, just in general, like that would take a certain amount of training or dedication, or you have to be wired differently to be like, that sounds like an incredible thing to do. But then to do that and be excited like you were, but also do it and help someone that has a disability like blindness to do it, to me, that's like another level of being wired differently. So did you just always have that in you? Like you always wanted to climb to great heights, and you had that on the bucket list, or how did that inspiration come about?
Yeah, climbing Everest, of course, was something I had dreamt of since I was a kid growing up here in the mountains, and never really thought it was something that would come about or be possible. It's so remote, it's expensive, the amount of time it takes, just never think it's going to be a reality. And then when Eric invited me and it became that reality, I was super excited and put in a ton of time training, and as did he. The thing is that, he's an adventurer and he's a climber and he's an athlete. And so this wasn't like, well, up off the couch, let's go. We both had years and years of experience to put into this. And then the whole thing about having this team organized by Eric and our Pasquale Scatura, our expedition leader, he'd been to Everest before, been to the Himalayas a number of times. And so we were a private expedition. We didn't hire guides, but we just put together this team that could work well together, had a lot of experience and athleticism to be able to pull it off. So yeah, we ramped up the training a little bit for Everest. Of course, want to make sure that you've got enough body fat on you, but enough muscle and strength to pull it off as well, and cardio fitness. So we put in the time, and we had years of desire and passion to put into this effort.
What does that look like? You say your fitness level and your body fat. Like what does that, like practically, what does that look like?
So I don't want to show up at 18,000 feet in the Himalayas getting ready to go to Everest underweight. I want to have a few extra pounds that I can
So
shed.
I would be really good for Everest.
Yeah. You would.
So most people are ready. Most people are ready for Everest.
Yeah, one of my teammates, he's 5'8". He probably weighs normally 155 pounds. He lost 35 pounds on the mountain.
Oh my gosh.
I lost about 10.
Gosh.
I lost about 10.
And that's how many days?
It was 10 weeks.
10. So it takes 10 weeks to climb that.
You can do it faster. It took us 10 weeks. You wait out a sickness, you wait out a storm. There's issues that arise. And it could be as quick as 6 weeks. You trek into base camp, that takes about 12 days. The travel, acclimatization, and then it's been done super fast with people these days using hypoxic tents. It's been climbed in under just a few days because they've acclimated on other peaks, sleeping in a hypoxic tent. So basically it's taking oxygen out of your environment to simulate the high altitude.
Really?
I used one just a couple of years ago to go back to the Himalayas, and it's acclimating while you sleep.
And so you do that here? You do that at home?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And your body can maintain that for how long?
It can. The longer you do it, the longer you can maintain it, or you can acclimate to a higher elevation. But I wouldn't recommend doing it and then not getting to your destination within that week.
So like you and I, we live at, let's just say 9,000 feet. How long do we keep those benefits when we go to sea level?
It's been studied. I would say when I came back from Everest, I kept those benefits for felt like a month or more.
Really?
Yeah. My benefits here going down to sea level, probably a couple of weeks, and it's gonna, it's not gonna just nosedive, but it'll taper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you said how many weeks again?
It was a 10-week expedition from
10 weeks.
Denver to Denver.
And then you had Sherpas along the way. Tell me about these
We
Sherpas.
did. Just to speak to your earlier comment, about me guiding Eric up, but you did say that the Time Magazine quote about being the greatest team, and it was really all about the teamwork. And that was the special dynamic we had, both we as the Americans that went over as a team, but then also working together with the Sherpas, who our success wouldn't have happened without them. So they're incredibly strong, incredibly gifted and talented, and selfless. Yeah.
Yeah, so they seem to be, I'm not taking a thing away from you or Eric, or their team in general, but they seem to be these unsung heroes that are kind of just in the background. But then I'm like, I look at these pictures in your book. You guys won't be able to see them if I hold them up. But you guys brought a quadriplegic to base camp, is that right?
Yeah, that was Pasquale's son.
They carried him up in baskets.
Yeah, they would take turns.
Guys, literally, this is these Sherpas are not big guys.
No, they're not.
What? How big? Like
just average.
5'6".
Average height is probably 5'6". Yeah, to 5'8".
150 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a basket big enough to fit a human in, and they have it across their back carrying this guy
or
up.
On their forehead. Like they have this tump line that goes around their forehead, and so they get the weight of him on their back mostly, but their neck and shoulder muscles are so strong because that's what they've been doing for their whole life, to haul loads up into the mountains.
No, you can't make it up. So I read in the book there was 3 people. I'm thinking they're like carrying him on a stretcher or something. But then I see a picture, and I was like, what is that? That's the weirdest. I don't understand what's going on there. And I looked closer, and it was literally a Sherpa carrying this guy.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. He probably weighed 140 pounds or so.
Yeah, but that's crazy.
And then the terrain and altitude and everything else. When he arrived at base camp, it was such a great celebration.
So tell me this. So these Sherpas have, like you'll see here in these pictures, it almost looks like they've been in a coal mine. Their faces are all sooty. Is that soot or is that
no,
freezer burn?
Yeah, it's basically freezer burn, sun and cold and wind.
Really?
Yeah. So
if you guys got to get this book so you can see these pictures. But literally, it looks like they came out of a coal mine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're darker skinned to begin with, but then with all that intense radiation, it's like crispy bacon.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Is it permanent damage?
No, well, they're just as susceptible as anybody to frostbite and frost nip, and so yes, sometimes that's permanent, but I would say mostly it's not. Yeah.
Wow. So I want to talk. We're into the climb, but I want to start before the climb. By the way, when did you take your mother to Mount Kilimanjaro? She was 62.
Yeah.
Was that before or after Everest?
That was after. So because that was one of the 7 summits, so that was just shortly after. I think it was 2003 or something like that.
Mom, if you're listening, she will not be offended by this, but that may be a bigger feat than taking a blind man up Everest.
Well, my mom's pretty hardy.
Apparently.
Yeah, she's done something like 40 of Colorado's 14ers. And
really?
Yeah, I took her up Pyramid Peak, which is a really challenging one. And, she was getting after it there for a while, and so when Kilimanjaro came up as a possibility, she did great.
But at 62, that's incredible.
Yeah,
you've got good genes.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was
honestly
proud of Mom on that one. I had to share a tent with her that whole week. I would say probably the hardest part of that for her was just the camping.
Oh yeah,
not being able to really get clean.
I bet
the whole week.
Yeah. So Aaron and I talked about this beforehand, and I think we're both fascinated by this part of the story. So how long before Everest was it that you fell off a cliff?
Yeah, that was on Amadou Blanc, which is a neighboring peak of Everest.
Okay.
And it was the year before. And I was there with Eric. We were training as a team for Everest. The peak is 22,500 feet. And we made it just up over 20, maybe almost 21,000 feet. So we were getting close.
Yeah.
But the weather, it was a springtime, and the weather was relentless. And Eric and I had been stuck in a storm at 20,000 feet together on a small ledge for 6 days, just the two of us.
Oh
And the team came up. We gave it our best effort to go to the summit, but the conditions were dicey. And so we really had a hard decision to make, because everyone in the world was telling us, you don't belong there, you're going to fail, don't even try. And so to turn around, you just feel like you got your tail tucked between your legs. And
sure.
So a hard decision, but we made that decision. And once we got together as a team, we began the descent. And we had to split up because the weather again turned nasty and it was slow going. And so half of the team went back and set up camp again. And I was in the first wave. And so I went down to our lower camp at 19,000 feet, which was on the edge of a 600-foot cliff. And when I got to that camp, something happened. I stepped on a rock. It moved under my feet, and it sent me down that 600-foot cliff.
Wow.
Yeah. I didn't fall 600 feet, thankfully. I would have died.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily call it a miracle, but I do say it's divine intervention that I landed on a ledge somewhere between 100, 150 feet down.
Yeah, and I hear you said a lot of four-letter words.
Yes. Help.
Stop.
Stop. Grab. Pray.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, that was a near-death experience.
No other words.
No other words.
Yeah, it was.
That you remember.
Yeah. That I can say on this podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, near-death experience.
And that was how much before you said?
1 year.
1 year.
1
And then,
year.
Aaron, you mentioned another story about his friend, right? You were curious. You had a friend that passed away 2
Yeah.
months before Everest, right?
Yeah, so it was
He
shortly
mentioned you
after.
experienced some loss. Yeah.
Yeah. So that fall, I didn't break any bones or even tear any ligaments, no concussion, nothing. I landed on my feet. It wasn't pure vertical, thankfully. But my lungs began to fill up with fluid that night because my body went into shock. And the response was to just, it was kind of a chaotic physiological response. And so my body started to leak fluids into my lungs, and I was getting high altitude pulmonary edema. My oxygen saturation right now in this room is about 94, 95%. At that time, it was 45%.
Wow.
And so that was
And
really...
that was at 20,000 feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
On the steep ridge. And so that was more like the life and death experience right there.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had an ER doc as my tent mate. He helped me down to base camp, and I was evacuated in a helicopter. But when I got home, I spent time with Joseph, was his name. He lived here in Vail, and he was my best friend and prayer partner. We'd get together consistently, and he was such an encouragement. I think about him, and he always believed in me more than I believed in myself. And I think both of us have a spouse like that.
Yeah,
They see us for more than we are.
Thank God.
Exactly. And he was a friend like that. And I wish everybody could have a friend like him, or that I could be a friend like that and see others with his eyes,
Yeah.
But it was my friend Joseph that died in a snowboarding accident here in East Vail as he went out into some very steep terrain by himself.
Oh, was that in East Vail Chutes?
It was in the East Vail Chutes.
Yeah.
And so it was the next day I went out with friends on the ski patrol and found him.
Mm.
And terribly difficult. I was kind of thinking, well, I'm a little fearful of going back to Everest after my accident and my pulmonary edema and everything else. And with Joseph's death, I thought, this is my ticket out. I was kind of being controlled a little bit by fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was your ticket out. How did that work out then?
Well, through prayer, I put it before the Lord. And I remembered I went to Joseph's memorial service, and it was an open casket, and I got to see him. And then next to that was his high school yearbook. And it was open to this page where the question was asked, and I think every yearbook has this, what are you going to do? That page after you graduate. Mm-hmm. And the answers were all pretty typical until you got to Joseph, and next to his picture it said, I'm going to make a difference in the world around me. And this was years later, and that's who he was, and that's how he lived. And he was living up to that statement. And I thought, wow, well, here's an opportunity for me on this climb to maybe make a difference in the world, and maybe in Eric's life, but maybe people with disabilities seeing what's possible.
Yeah.
And in Joseph's word, he said, they can't let this opportunity pass you by. And so in a way, it was to honor my friend, even just to put it out there before the Lord and start praying about it.
Well, that certainly happened in your life. I mean, no doubt. So that line of questioning brings me to the big question I have reading your story. And what's interesting is I've known you for years, and I'm just now really digging in. But talk me through how the process of Okay, so how many? The time you wrote this book, there's 140 corpses on Everest, according to the book. There's probably more than that now.
More now, yeah.
Okay, and that's not number of deaths. That's just number of corpses.
Yeah, at that time.
Okay.
Right. People who died at high altitude, fell in a crevasse, were otherwise unretrievable.
And while you were up there, one of the all-time greatest
at that
Sherpas
time,
at that time passed.
Babu Chiri.
Yeah. Snow collapsed under him, came into a crevasse.
At Camp 2.
At Camp 2.
Yeah, which is not, difficult terrain. There's a fairly well-established path to get you through camp, but he was wandering around, I think, taking pictures. It's just one of those things. You can never let your guard down.
Yeah.
Babu Chiri, he spent 24 hours on the summit of Everest without oxygen. He had the speed ascent at that time record of Everest. His record was like 18 hours. It's been crushed since then with new methods and different things. But and then he was a 10-time summiter, going for his 11th, and fell in a crevasse and died. And that's very sobering when you're there with a blind person and you see one of the world's greatest go down. Imagine. You're like, whoa, let's reassess here.
Yeah. But so I want to talk about before you started though. So at that point you're married to Amy. No kids, right?
No, I'm not. I'm single.
You're single.
Yeah. So
okay, so that may change.
That was easy. Yeah.
So, but even then, so you have near death. Your friend dies doing something way less extreme than what you're about to do. You know that 140 corpses are there. More people have died than corpses. You know there's a very real chance. I think in the book you said it's amazing that nobody from our group died. Like it was almost like if you can make it with everybody alive, like that's how much reality it was, right?
Yeah. How
do you make that decision to do something? And I don't want this to come across disrespectful because I love what you've done. Okay, I just want to inspire people and myself. So it's an arbitrary thing you're doing. I mean, it's not like you have to do this thing. It's something you're doing because you want to do it. How do you move past that point of like, I could die, but I'm still going to do this thing that I don't necessarily have to do? Does that question make sense?
Yep. Makes total sense. I guess I don't, my parents probably thought of it more than I did. Because it's not their realm, they don't have that expertise. It's what I've grown up in, what I've spent years doing. There's confidence both in my own self and skills, but especially in the team and in the team of Sherpas and everything that we're putting into this, that we can do it. We'll watch ourselves. We'll be careful. And I learned a big lesson from the year before, watch every step. Yeah. Don't let your guard down. Stay focused, and turn back if you're low on energy or, whatever it is. Yeah. There's not much room for error. It's a very thin margin. So, to answer your question, it's that confidence in self, in team, and also in the Lord. And I say this, that I feel as though I was on a mission that the Lord had put me on, and his goal for me wasn't to stand on the summit. His goal for me was to trust him. And that started day one when I said, I want to go back and be a part of this team. Yeah. He's not impressed that I would do that or even trust him or climb Everest, but he's pleased that I would trust him. He's not pleased necessarily for the summit. I think he's pleased about the trust.
I like that.
And honoring him.
The summit's just the bonus that comes along with trusting.
Yeah.
It's like that icing on the cake for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I put it before him, looking for that way out, and fear and doubt had a grip on me after all those events. And so I prayed about it and said, Lord, speak through the doctor that I'm going to go see. And I went and saw this specialist in Boulder, and he looked at my lungs and said, if you're careful, I don't see why you can't go back. Nuts. And I called very well-known high-altitude experts, doctors, physicians, and kind of consistently got the same feedback, same answer. And then I put it in front of the team, and not one of them said no. That was kind of another confirmation with prayer throughout this. I took Eric aside and asked him, and he said, my whole life people have made judgments about me because I'm blind, what I can and what I can't do. I'm not going to do that same thing to you. Wow. even though I wanted him to.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I said, Eric, I don't know if I'm strong enough to get you to the top, but I know I'm strong enough to help you get there.
Yeah.
Or if I don't know, I'm strong enough to get to the top myself, but I'm strong enough to help you get there. And so I felt like through that series of events, as well as the funding that came through at the last minute, it's like God's hand is kind of here. Now it's up to me. He's opened the door pretty wide. What do I do?
Yeah, who was the big funder that came through at the end? I read that.
The National Federation of the Blind.
Well, there was another one too, wasn't there?
Well, Allegra. They
Allegra,
put money into the documentary that was made called Farther Than the Eye Can See.
Okay.
And some of that funding kind of worked out towards team expenses and stuff too. So,
So do you think, as you were talking about the confidence you have, the confidence in your skills, your training. I mean, there's a lot of extreme athletes that die every year. I don't know if a lot every year, but it seems like I hear of a couple. There's probably a lot more that I don't hear about. Do you think they all feel that way going in?
Yeah, I think so.
And is it
do.
something that you, because you were an extreme athlete, is it something, because Eric, like we're talking about Everest, he still climbs like on a regular basis the iced over waterfall. I mean, literally, it's nothing but a sheet of ice waterfall in Vail, and he'll go up and climb this thing. Like, to me, that's extreme as extreme can get. Like, I can just imagine hitting the ice with my pick and the whole thing.
That happens.
Yeah, well, that's why I won't be doing it. But like, you're still extreme even to this day. But is it just something? Is it a risk that you're just willing to, like, you couldn't live without doing it, type of thing?
I'm not pursuing it as much as I was even just a few years ago.
Well, maybe back then.
Back then, and even with kids, I feel like my risk is very calculated. People might see what I do as extreme, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to walk away when things don't look right or feel right or the team's not right.
Yeah.
Or my training's off or whatever it is. I'm humble enough to say I don't have it today.
Yeah.
And turn back. Sadly, Hillary Nelson, she's the first to have skied down Lhotse with her, I forget her ski partner's name, a man, Jim, I want to say his name is, but she just recently died in the Himalayas in an avalanche. You see it happen all the time with people who are at the very limit, the high end.
Yeah.
And I'm not there. I'm not one of those,
But you were.
No, never.
You wouldn't consider Everest that?
I don't consider climbing Everest as crazy extreme. Maybe if I was going to ski the north face of Everest.
Only a man that has climbed Everest can say what he just said. Nobody else in the world has any right to say that.
But you take it to another level when you go to a mountain like Lhotse and you ski the couloir down the north face of it. That's pretty wild. That's a whole nother level. It's more fitness, it's more skill, it's more complicated with your equipment. There's more that can go wrong. So I've been skiing my whole life. I would love to have been able to do that. But I don't know if that's a risk I would take.
Yeah.
So there's a line there. But yeah,
you're saying there's another level.
There's another level.
Category of those.
Absolutely. And I'm not at that level. I'm humble enough to say it. I would like to be, that'd be great. But as I get older and I've got daughters, I don't really see why I should. There's plenty to do here at home that's fun and entertaining and exciting for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have, I guess I was watching a documentary on that guy named Alex that did the free soloing thing.
Alex Honnold.
And and they did like a brain scan and he didn't have as many fear signals that would fire off, like, whereas me, like, all of my fear like signals, like, they go
bananas
like they're supposed to. But he doesn't have those. So like climbing something without ropes, like, is what he has to do to actually get to that level of, I guess, excitement or thrill or whatever. So would you say that that's like kind of that category that you don't find yourself in? Like you kind of have more of that, or you're just more wise with, what you choose to tackle?
Yeah, that's, I can't even put myself in the same league as what he's able to do in terms of stuffing his fear and moving beyond it. He's married and has a kid now, so he's probably, those fear receptors are starting to kick in maybe.
Challenged as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But that is that other level. Yeah. Am I more wise? I think anybody that uses a rope, that's wisdom.
Yeah, agreed.
But am I more wise? I don't know. He knows his abilities and he's willing to take that risk. I guess that's the difference, is he's willing to take that risk, and I am not.
Well, it's funny that he would say that. You guys have to Eric Alexander Jesus ladder if you can't see this, but I mean that's not risky according to Eric, I guess. But that right there, just looking at it, makes my palms sweat. Like the stuff that you guys do, it's unbelievable. So let's do this. Let's shift. That's just an interesting conversation for me, because I feel like what we were just talking about, the whole fear thing. I think having a wife. I thought you were married at that time.
May not have happened if I was.
Is that right?
To be honest, I went and did Denali.
Well, that was my question. I was going to ask that.
Yeah, twice.
Would you have done it, you think, if you had?
Went to Aconcagua. I don't know.
What about, let's add this, wife and kids?
Well, I went back to Amida Blam just recently.
You did?
Yeah, that's the one I almost died on. So we had to work through it.
Yeah.
And we prayed about it, and I'm very calculated, and I can see the mistakes and the errors and why the probabilities and why it happened and why it won't again, and I can kind of give her the math on why it's a good idea. But she just has to have faith.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's get to the. What's that? Say that again.
I want to hear that proposal to your wife. Now listen, last time I almost died. I stepped on this rock. Okay. This time I don't anticipate that rock will be there. So I will make it home.
That's right. I've cleared the trail. It's going to be fine now.
I think Amy's well conditioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. To it. Yeah. Okay. So let's get to the summit, right? So, because I have questions, I have a lot of questions after that. I know we're going kind of long, so I'll speed this up.
That's fine.
Okay. I'm really enjoying this. So
that's great.
Okay.
You'll probably edit half of it out anyway.
No, we won't. We don't
half.
edit a lot. Just me. So tell me some of the biggest, craziest moments going up.
Oh,
the
man.
Jesus ladder? No? Yeah.
Yeah. Shoot. Let's see. The craziness started before we got to base camp, 14,000 feet. We had a Sherpa on our team that had summited many times. He goes down having seizures. We don't know what it's related to, if he has a history of this or not, but he was going to be a part of our climbing team, and boom, he's gone.
Wow.
Getting helicoptered out. Massive seizures. Another woman just trekking in with us got cerebral edema, 14,000 feet.
What is that?
It's like pulmonary edema, but it's inside your skull.
And that can happen from high altitude?
Yeah, so it's fluid inside your skull putting pressure on your brain, and it can be rapidly fatal.
Crazy.
So, the key to any of these is descend. Any problem. Another guy got helicoptered out. He got a bloody nose that lasted for days. Could not get it to stop, so we helicoptered him out. Babu died when we were at Camp 2.
When you were there?
Yeah, while we were there. We were...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, he was a pretty celebrated guy, and so we were excited. Eric and Babu were both on the Mountain Hardware sponsored team, and so we had access to him, and we were hanging out, and we were getting to know these guys. As we're going up, let's see, avalanches happening around us, the Khumbu icefall collapsing in different places, changing your route, crushing your ladders that span those gaps. Getting to the very first one. The first time through the Khumbu icefall, it took us 13 hours just to go.
That's the ice falls. I mean, it probably won't show up very well, but just for perspective, it's 2,000
vertical feet of jumbled up ice, of crevasses that are hundreds of feet deep, sometimes 50 feet wide spans that you're having to navigate. And so you want to get through there while it's frozen in the morning and do it quickly. And anything under 6 hours is really too long. It took us 13. And at that time, I thought, I don't know. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? We can't be doing this. Summit day, if it's triple the time of most other people, forget it. But we worked it out. We worked through it. Later on, we could get Eric from base camp to Camp 2 in 6 hours. And that's more like it. That was huge. Going up to, let's see, the Lhotse face, we had lots of debris coming down at us, rock and ice. A couple of things almost took Eric out and me out as well. The people continuing to kind of get sick, fall back, other teams failing. Teams that were, kind of had some all-stars too that should have really succeeded, but people not getting along well, teams not focused, and having disagreements. And that was one thing, having Eric on our team. People, when we arrived, they'd say, keep your distance, watch out for those guys. Don't climb on the same day as them. They're going to cause problems. But as time went on, people began to look to us for help. They saw that we were just so strongly knit together, and that made us an incredible team.
Do you feel he added a unifying factor?
Absolutely. Yeah. We haven't really recovered the magic of that team. The same people, we just haven't recovered what we had at that time.
Is that right?
Yeah. And sometimes just the greater the challenge, the greater the hazard, the more it brings out in each person, that kind of level of commitment and sacrifice and everything else. So on lesser peaks, we've had spats and, been more like other teams that we saw on Everest.
Wow.
But that's just getting to Camp 4 was an ordeal. We got to Camp 4, and when we got there, as we took off for the summit, a leader of another team brought up a camera, and he said, I want to be the first person to film Eric's body being brought down off of Everest.
Which Eric? You or
Blind Eric?
Blind Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to say.
That's encouraging.
If it wasn't for the altitude, you may want to fight him.
Yeah, exactly. So there we've made it to Camp 4. We've kind of battling other people's opinions, other people's schedules. A Russian team stole our ropes. They offered to help us with one thing, but they ended up stealing our ropes from us. It just kind of went on and on. Death of climbers around us. On the Lhotse or the Hillary Step, a person grabbed an old rope. It snapped on them and they fell to their death. A Russian climber fell to his death the night before we're going to climb. You start to see the corpses that have been frozen on the mountain.
So you actually saw the corpses?
Not, you see a couple. It's rather unavoidable. But a Spanish climber on another team went missing late into the evening, and we're getting ready to go for the summit, and they asked us to go help look for him. And if we did, it's like trip's over. But we started getting ready. We're going to go look. And then he turned up after some prayer.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
So I'm sorry, keep going.
Well, one last story. So we're getting ready. The wind's howling. We're getting dressed, and it's like 30 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts hitting your tent at 26,000 feet. You got your oxygen on. You're sleeping in your down suit with a sleeping bag over that, maybe playing some cards. Eric has Braille cards and just passing the time. And this expedition leader comes over uninvited. He's just made it from the summit, and his skin is all sunburned and cracked and flaky. His lips are cracked. His eyes are bloodshot. He's got boogers frozen in his beard. It's like a Yeti. And he comes over and he rips open the tent and he pokes his head in and he goes, "You guys, you're going to have a hell of a time getting a blind guy up there." And then he zips it closed. I say it's like a little leprechaun just came and peed in your Lucky Charms.
Oh my gosh.
We could not get any help or encouragement really along the way.
Wow.
But it really forced us inside to ourselves and to our own team, and it forced me to just continue to seek the Lord. And I've never felt the closeness to him that I've really felt in those days, depending on him so intently.
Yeah, I've got some questioning about that towards the end here, for sure. Aaron, did you have anything? I want to give you a chance.
I was just going to say, as you were speaking, just what a huge analogy for what the Christian walk is like and the things that we face when we do have an enemy that's trying to thwart what God has intended for us, the heights that we're to reach spiritually in Christ, that we can be, dissuaded to go left or go right or turn back or be discouraged by others that come. And I just think that's really powerful. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I think so often we give in to our own fears and doubts, and especially when it's sugar coated in discouragement with others. You know, you're having a hard enough time yourself with your own fears and doubts, and then those people come along to just kind of kick sand in your face at that time and discourage you.
Right.
That's really tough. And I think as Christians, you know, that's unacceptable, because we have the Lord to lean into and to depend on and trust, and other believers as well. Yeah. And we're just coming out of a time of people being afraid of their own shadows.
Oh gosh,
you know, and some still are, and they never for a second should have been or should be. I mean, there's plenty of other things to consider and be fearful of, but to me, it's exciting as things are unfolding. Like, I see God's plan and His purpose and His nearness. Yeah, it's like, bring it.
No, there's a lot to that for sure. I'm not trying to change subjects because I really want to end on some of these notes. But I have a couple. These are going to sound petty after what we just talked about. I have a couple just questions.
That's great.
So oxygen. How the heck do you get oxygen tanks up to the top? You carry them, I guess.
There again, that's why you're so thankful to have hired help, Sherpas, who have been working hard for weeks before you even get to base camp. And so part of their work is to make caches up the mountain. So that's tents.
Oh, really?
It's cooking gear.
So they're taking trips.
They're taking trips before they even know who I am. And they've deposited oxygen bottles that are, you know, at the time, state of the art. They're lightweight, and special masks and everything else. And, you know, some of that's at base camp so you can get familiar with it, but a lot of it's been hauled up the mountain just ready for you. So it makes it pretty cushy. If it can be cushy, that's how you get cushy.
This cracks me up. Cushy. Nothing cushy.
Super comfortable, yeah.
But legit, like without those Sherpas, it doesn't happen.
Well, it would happen. I think
it would just be it would be you going.
Probably not maybe now. At that time, we absolutely needed them, but now we have even more experience.
Yeah.
I would always prefer to have them, but would it be an impossibility without them? No. I think we would just have to restructure, and I'd have to suck it up and actually do more work.
What's the lifespan of those Sherpas? Is it short because of how hard they work, or is it long because of how hard they work?
Both. You know, the guys who are working hard high in the mountains like that, it's shorter.
Is it?
And they're exposing themselves and their brains to this reduced oxygen environment. You know, that's hard on a person.
Yeah.
And it's hard living, but, you know, they smoke a lot of them too and things like that. Like at 22,000 feet, I remember passing a Sherpa who just having a smoke break.
It's unbelievable.
Are you kidding me?
That's crazy. Yeah. Unbelievable. Okay.
Another guy's in his jeans, like going from camp 3 to camp 4. He's got long johns on under him, but it's like, man, I got this super high tech gear. You know, I'm feeling pretty dialed, and he's coming down in his jeans and smoking a cigarette. Like,
flip flops.
That's crazy.
Hawaiian shirt.
Well, flip flops on the way in. A lot of them, you know, they're not all Sherpas. The Sherpas are the people that live up in the high mountain valleys. And so you have the lower regions, which are Nepalese people, and there's different, I don't know, I would say tribes, but different people groups. And so a lot of your porters are not necessarily Sherpas, but they're poor. And so they would haul up your gear in a basket or, you know, on that line over their forehead, and they'd be wearing flip-flops. And you buy them shoes, and they put their shoes on the backpack and keep their flip-flops. And
really?
Even when it's light snow, it's like, this is just what I prefer. Yeah, or barefoot.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
Well, I've got to keep this moving because we're already pushing some time here, and there's so much to talk about. So you get to the top. So tell me about either the last bit or even just your experience at the top.
Yeah, summit day was 19 hours.
And how far did you go?
To the summit.
No, I mean
to 29,000.
No, but how
feet.
do you think that's a mile? It's 5 miles to the top.
The very top.
3,000 vertical feet. It don't really talk in terms of mileage. You know how it is. Like you skin up Vail Mountain, you don't really talk about the miles. Maybe you talk about more time.
I don't talk about anything. I'm about to throw up the entire time.
Elevation. So 13 hours up, 6 hours down, 3,000 vertical feet. Normally 3,000 vertical feet you can cover in a couple hours or less, depending on what you're doing. But just one step at a time, we left, single file line, heading out, pretty silent. Nobody's really talking. It's dark. Headlamps are lighting our way up. We go up into a whiteout. Our team leader turns around. His feet are starting to freeze. He's got no energy. Super crazy moment. Eric says, I haven't seen my hand in 20 years. What's the big deal, Like, okay, whiteout, we can just keep going. Sherman Bowl is on our team, 65 years old. It's his 5th attempt. And he said, I didn't plan on being the oldest person, which he would become, to climb Everest. I just got old trying. And
wow.
we're in this full-on whiteout in the storm. And he said, if you want good weather, go to Central Park. You're on Mount Everest. What'd you expect? Like, okay, sure. That's wisdom right there.
Yeah.
Keep going on. But you're doing this inventory, like fingers, got them, toes, feeling okay, looking at each other, sussing it out. And then you just keep going. And then finally that whiteout it passed and we could see stars. And then from the stars, eventually we saw that first little glow of sun over Makalu, which is the world's 5th highest peak. And at that point, it's like, there's hope. You don't feel that warmth, the heat, but you feel that warmth of hope. At the South Summit, nodding my head, thinking this isn't going to happen. And then one of my teammates just makes that next step, and you go, okay, it'll happen. We can do this. All right, we got it. And we keep plugging away. Then the Hillary step, and finally the summit. And just biggest, one of the records was the largest team, 19 of us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
There's 19.
19 of us, so 11 Americans and 8 Sherpas.
Wow.
And it should say the biggest team of crybabies ever to be on the summit, because we were all just so full of joy and tears.
I can't imagine.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty extraordinary. Great moment. Never forget it.
So I was reading. It's like we were we were all together on an area the size of a kitchen table.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were just talking about the flood of emotions that came over. In fact, there's an excerpt from the book. I just think it's so great. I'm just going to read it. Page 180, if you guys want to look at it. It says, the 5 of us stood on the snow patch the size of a kitchen table, which is the top of the world. What I wanted was a moment when the earth would stand still, a complete pause, and a moment to reflect on life, to take in view, to celebrate with a shout, praise God. Instead, what I got was a brief celebration with friends. I was so overcome by emotion, so choked up I could barely speak, let alone shout. I was indeed moved, not by the beauty, but by the accomplishment. I was moved by Eric, for myself, for Joseph, for his family, and for those that believed and urged us on. It's weird I'm reading your words. I should probably have you read them for me. But this is the part that I really loved. It wasn't that I had done it. No, it was that we had done it. All of us together had overcome the obstacles of criticism and doubt and fear and stood courageously on top. Together. In that moment, it was pure team celebration. It was not me, but you. And that made it all the sweeter. The only thing I can imagine that would be sweeter would be the steps that lead through the gates of heaven and seeing Jesus face to face. Wow. First off, it's awesome. It almost got me misty thinking through that. But beyond that, I thought, especially that second part, like that's discipleship, right? It was not we had done it. All of us together had overcome the obstacles. Together in that moment was pure team. So it was not me, but you. And that made it all the sweeter. I feel like that's our Christian walk. As I was reading that, I was like, that's such a great portrayal of what we're trying to do in ordinary men and ordinary women is do this together. It's like, it's me. It's not me. It's you. It's us. It's together. And I think there's just a lot of joy in that. And I don't know. I really enjoyed that. So.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, you wrote it, so you could say.
No,
it's great.
I think it's great. I think it's great that you bring that up because that's pastors, right? Shouldn't that be our pastors? It's not me. And so many pastors get up there, and it's me. It's it's the show.
Yeah.
I know Calvary here is blessed with Nate. That's not him.
No, it's not.
He's about other people, and he wants to see them overcome by the grace of God and support them and take the focus off of himself and put it on other people who are deserving. And I think you, as someone who has a ministry of discipleship, it's that same thing. If you're doing it right, you're elevating others. You're not elevating self. And I think that's the Christian walk essentially is that we elevate others and we want to seek to help and encourage and bring people closer to the Lord.
Well, I mean, it's very different, but very similar to what you experienced, which is, and I tell people all the time, ordinary movement and discipleship will never happen because one person's great at it. It takes everyone pulling their weight and discipling others.
Yeah.
You can only disciple so many people at one given time. So the more that we all take it, and then we all do it together, and it's amazing what we can accomplish. I think we've forgotten that somewhat in our faith, and we think that one person is supposed to do it, the person we pay. It's just not what I read in the Word of God. But it just inspired me reading that, and I was just thinking through like that journey. There's a lot more correlations that I'd like to hit on as well. Aaron, do you have anything there before I?
Yeah, no, I think that was an amazing piece to tie in to the spiritual journey there, and reminded me very much, of ordinary men, and kind of having just finished leading a group myself, like the same sort of heart that, guys, this is something we are doing together. It's not just I convinced all of you guys to come and be a part of this thing and like pulling teeth to try to get people to come and participate, but it's not just a self-serving thing. It's something that all of us come out of together with that sort of summit experience at the end of a year where, wow, look what God did through us and is going to do through us.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge.
Yeah, doing it together too. Thinking about Eric, what everybody else saw in Eric was dead weight, and what I saw was a guy who was pulling his weight.
Yeah.
And contributing. Maybe he couldn't carry as much, or shouldn't, or there's certain things. It's like the body of Christ. We all have our abilities, our gifts, and we use those for the good of the team. And where Eric came in so strong was his motivation and his spirit. Like, we got this, we can do this. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep giving my everything to this effort. You just be my eyes, you know? And so, yeah, I was literally his eyes, as the scripture says, the eye, does it say, to the other body part? I can't recall which one exactly at this moment. But it's like that. So yeah, I was his eyes, and he was the heart, maybe at one day.
Yeah.
And that we just carry the weight together.
Yeah. And I think like this whole thing, doing it together, like if you would have had, how many people you said 19 summited?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
23.
So if 18 of them would have stayed back and said, I'm going to cheer you on, I'm gonna support you, and you needed financial support, but
yeah,
I'm gonna support you financially. I'm gonna make sure there's a nice warm meal when you get back. I'm gonna really encourage you to climb. Like, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we forget in the faith that doing it together is not just cheering somebody on or giving them a pat on the back or saying good job. It's doing it together, and that's what discipleship is to me. It's doing it together.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so important.
Great point.
So you're on top. Anything else you want to say about that before we move past that?
So, most people die on the way down than on the way up.
Yeah.
And so that was in the back of my mind as I'm looking out over the horizon and seeing this giant storm cloud come at us. Of course, this is not long after the whole Into Thin Air tragedy, and so it's pretty fresh. I'm like,
I don't remember that. What was that?
A group of people were climbing. They were all clients, signed on to teams to be guided up the mountain, and they were slow in getting to the top, and they had a turnaround time which they did not keep.
This is Everest?
Yeah.
Okay.
They surpassed it by hours. And the weather forecast was for storms to come in late in the day. And so they got caught, and a number of them died on the mountain, including the guides. So,
wow.
Yeah, Into Thin Air, a book you might want to check out. It's kind of an antithesis of our story. Ours, plays out with such great success. Theirs is just very tragic.
Yeah, I mean, what you did is unbelievable. I know you downplay it at times, but it is unbelievable what you guys accomplished.
So I was just going to say, you were asking about the summit, more people die on the way down. On the summit, all of a sudden, it was just Eric and me, and I had to get him off of the summit. And so I got him from the summit back to Camp 4, and I found like that maybe that was my purpose. Being on this team and on this trip was for those few hours. Eventually, Charlie Mace came and was with us, and as we ended up going back down to Camp 4, but really feeling kind of solo and responsible for Eric, late in that day. But God gave me strength that was beyond me, kind of a second miracle. All I had that whole day, those 19 hours, was a Twix bar.
What? Yeah. A Twix of all things.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's good sustenance right there.
Yeah, I tell you.
Yeah.
That's good advertisement for Twix.
Yeah, come on, Twix. Where you at?
What are
Mars,
you doing?
they were not
Why
interested.
haven't you supported?
Aaron, we got to get Twix to support this podcast.
Yeah.
I'll eat a Twix every time we have a podcast if they'll support it. Or I'll just do it for no reason at all, just to do it.
Tastes good.
So, and I want to talk more about that descent real quick, but how many records? I don't want to move past that.
5 records.
And what were they?
Blindest man in the world, as the Sherpas called him.
Okay.
The oldest man in the world, Sherman Bull at 64. The largest team, 19 of us. First American father and son. And then the largest camera.
Largest camera.
A 25-pound HD
Oh my gosh.
video camera
That's crazy.
with a tripod. And I don't mean, like the industrial version of this one.
Is that right?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the massive
Oh my gosh.
tripod. So
Wow.
that took a couple of guys Sherpas were hired just to be camera support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the descent. We don't spend a ton of time on it, but that's one thing that kind of got my attention as well of reading your book. Is I always think, oh, they're at the top now. They're just gonna like jog down.
Paraglide.
Right? I mean, I know it's not right, but that in your head, that's kind of what you're like. Oh, now they just shoot on down, or maybe there's an easy way down or something.
Yeah.
But there's not. Like you got to go back across the Jesus ladder, back across the ice chutes, the whole thing, right?
Which we had to do 5 times, 5 up and 5 down. You know,
Why 5?
Acclimating process, weather.
Well, you have to acclimate going down.
No. So 5 times going up. You know, we'd go up to camp 1 and then back down to base camp. Up to camp 2, back down to base camp.
I didn't
Up
realize
to camp
this.
3, back down to base camp. Back to camp 2, weather looks bad. Back down to base camp.
Really?
Yeah. So you climb that mountain many times
Oh, I did
before
not know
you
that.
get your summit off.
Wow.
Yeah. And so 5 up and 5 down, you know, let your takeoffs equal your landings. That's good. But yeah, going down, just like you said, people think it's easy. And that's what happens is people kind of go, ooh, yeah, we got this. And then they forget to strap their crampon or whatever it is. And they make
Yeah.
a mistake and they die.
Yeah.
Some scary moments on the way down too. You just can never let up. And then I call it the X-lax effect. You finally make it back to base camp for the last time, and it's like, just
I can't
this
imagine.
release of emotion.
I cannot even imagine.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
so there's the literal descent, and by the way, we are landing this plane as well. So if you guys are listening, we're not going to be too much longer here. But there's the literal descent. But then, and so I'm like, the two things that I was most fascinated coming in by is like the courage to go ahead and do this, even though you almost died, your friend just died, and then possible death, and this is an arbitrary thing that you don't have to do, and then this idea of what is life like after you do this? And I just want to read a quote from your book. This is Lily Unsold. Is it? Yeah. You've climbed the highest mountain in the world. What's left? It's all downhill from there. You've got your sights set on something higher than Everest. And then what you wrote is, the high that one gets standing on the top of the world lasts a few months, maybe even a year. What follows for most is the big question, what's next? Climbers who have stood on Everest commonly struggle with depression once the goal has been met. Often it's a symbol of a lifetime of hard work, training, saving, financial planning, and finally executing the long sought after goal that stood on the horizon as merely a dream, perhaps even unthinkable. Now one day awakened, back from the dream, reality sets in, back to the grind, only this time without the goal, the object of desire, and the longing. Like that to me, we saw that with, who was the swimmer, the amazing swimmer?
Michael Phelps.
Yeah, we saw it with Michael Phelps. He won all those gold medals, and then he like went into depression and was in his room and would eat Domino's pizza and play video games. And like legitimately people had to like get him out of the funk.
Yeah.
Like, did you experience that? And no, you didn't.
I
Wow.
didn't. No, because I think I love the original movie Cars.
Yeah.
the line, it almost made me cry in the movie when Lightning McQueen, pushes the other car.
Come on, Aaron, you got young kids. What is it?
Dynaco, Mr. the King. He pushes him across the line, and but what about the cup? And he just says, it's just an empty cup. And
Oh, wow.
to me, I look at Everest not as something great that I've done, but something great that the Lord has done in my life. And it's just a giant Ebenezer. It's a reminder of something good that God has done. And it's not necessarily the mountain that is the good thing. It's the trust, the closeness, the seeking, the pursuing, that couple of months just so focused on him and getting into his word. And it goes so much beyond that. And so, I never put that much stock. I was just glad to be there, that I had the opportunity, and it wasn't my everything.
Yeah.
My relationship with Jesus is my everything. And so I had that all the way through. And when I came home, it was even richer.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go through that. And to me, it's the mountain I'm climbing today, hiking up Bellyache Ridge, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to encourage people with too, is, don't make that one thing your everything. Just find joy in the moment and in the day.
That's so good.
And in relationship, especially with the Lord.
Aaron, I need to hear that. I have nothing like Everest. People may even be like, well, what pinnacle have you ever hit, Jeremy? But I've had things that I've really worked hard for that I accomplished, and sometimes earlier in my life than I thought. And I have to say, I felt a large sense of emptiness afterwards. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why that really spoke to me when I read that, because I was like, man, I want to hear Eric's response to this, because, and I kind of did because it's in the book. But I wanted the listeners to hear it, because for me that has been a bit of a struggle at times of like, well, okay, I just gave all this effort for all this time to accomplish X, and then I accomplish it, and it's like, well, now what? Like, just it feels empty. And I think that's fascinating that you can get through that without that emotion.
It's a struggle. Especially just now, I make a living by speaking to groups, and through this COVID stuff, it wasn't happening, and virtual stinks. And so, it's been hard, because you put a lot of yourself into your work, and it means so much, and it's such a reflection of you, and especially as men, it's important to us. And so losing a lot of that, it's been hard, but it just causes me to turn away from that and not idolize work, but prioritize the Lord.
Yeah.
And be seeking him. And, it continues to be a daily struggle. You see other people achieving these things and going off, and, a guy skied K2 is like, dang, that would have been great if I could have been the first to do that. Why didn't I try to do that? Or, and you get kind of jealous and envious of these people who are still living on the edge and living for that every moment. But then at some point, if they don't know Jesus, it's going to be that empty cup.
Yeah.
They're going to come back. There won't always be the next grander, greater thing. And I've seen that in people around me who don't have Jesus in their life. They fill it with those cups that are empty. Yeah. And pretty soon, like Michael Phelps, you're getting high and eating pizza. To fill the void, something's got to fill it.
Yeah. So true. So true.
That's a good word.
Well, let's wrap it up with a couple last questions I have for you. So, and you'll be very humble and play it down, but you're an extraordinary human being. Like, what you've accomplished is unbelievable. But yet you go through a process called ordinary men. So tell me how somebody that's so extraordinary in their life, and I'm assuming this is true, can feel so ordinary at times in their faith, and if that's even true, or tell me how that speaks to you.
You're very kind. I guess I've never seen myself as God has achieved extraordinary things, and He's used me to play a part in it.
Yeah.
And so I don't see myself as extraordinary. I see myself as serving an extraordinary God. And I've just been blessed to be a part of this special journey that He's put me on. And I know myself all too well. Maybe, so I know my failures and I know my shortcomings. Yeah. And I fool people, but I've got plenty. I've got a lot of them. And so, that keeps you truly humble.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what you've accomplished when you know that you're a failure saved by grace. And so that's the only thing that keeps me in the game.
Amen. I love that.
Is that I've got God's grace. So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think, I mean, would you agree with this, that even the most extraordinary human beings, when it comes to our faith, often feel very ordinary? It's a very humbling approach, and it should be, right?
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
If it's not humbling, then
Right.
we may need to check ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that about so many people that I look up to and respect, that when they have that humility to see themselves for truly who they are, you know, and put themselves in the right place and God's on the throne,
Yeah.
you know, that's encouraging. And that's, I think, we're a great place where discipleship can start, because it just evens the playing field. And, you know, having been a Christian a long time and discipled many, that the more open and honest you can be,
That's right.
the better that discipleship or discipling relationship is going
For sure.
to be. The deeper it'll go, and the greater the impact can be.
Yeah. Well, final question. It revolves around one of our very strong cultural values, with this high challenge, high grace. Like, we want to bring challenge within the space of our faith. And everything that you have discussed today has extreme challenge with it. I mean, even the smallest of climbs that you've done have extreme challenge. Like, it's unbelievable. And I think you would agree with me that men we're drawn towards this challenge in our lives, things that are hard, trying to accomplish things that require some sacrifice. And why do you think, and maybe you don't think this way, but maybe I feel this way. You can disagree if you do. Why do you think it is that why do you think it's important to have challenge in our faith, and why do you think we've taken it out of faith? Like, I just feel like in today's faith culture around Christianity, we like shy away from anything that requires any bit of challenge. But yet I think that we're wired to want that in our lives. Can you speak to that? And you can disagree with me. I mean, you don't have to agree. Yeah.
No, I do agree. That's a loaded, hard question to answer, because I can't answer it for others. I guess I can answer it in terms of what I observe
Sure.
in the church, that it's too easy, that it's become more of just a show, social gathering,
A come and see. Yeah.
There's not, other than singing worship songs, there's not much opportunity to participate unless you're volunteering in the nursery or setting up chairs or tables or something like that. And then the service really comes to just serving the church. You're serving this event, which I don't always see as being the most important thing. And I think that's what we're trying to get at, is challenging ourselves and each other to something greater. And that's maybe what needs to happen in the church in that meeting, is more of a commission to, like, let's go do something, and I've got this vision for this event and this out here and that out there, and versus, you know, let's go serve the community and let's get out and here's some avenues, or tell us how you're doing it now, or, you know, what other things there are, and bring that in here, and let's start to meet the needs of the community. And that requires stepping out of your comfort zone. I think going to church, for some people, you know, that is stepping out of their comfort zone. But for most of us who have been going to church for a long time, it's just too comfortable. It's too easy. Yeah. You can just kind of fade in and fade out, and there's no real call to do something beyond that.
Yeah, I think we've disenfranchised, if that's the right word, bored a lot of men. And I can speak to men more than women, but I think women as well, based on the response that I see from ordinary women. Which is phenomenal. But I think that we've created an environment that's almost lulled us to. And I listen. I'm not pointing fingers at pastors. I'm pointing at myself as much as any. I'm like, how can we be part of the solution? But I think we've just lulled ourselves to sleep, where it's just a really comfortable place we can come and see, but we're not really challenged to do. And I don't know. Just your story reminded me of that cultural value that we have. This high challenge, high grace environment where. You know, everything about your life revolves around what's the next challenge, what's the next crazy thing, right? And what if we just looked at our faith life that way? It's like, man, where's the challenge? Where's the area that God can use me? Where's this problem that I can come in and try to help solve with the power of the Holy Spirit in my life? I just think that would be if we could get that approach in our faith, I can't imagine what the world would look like. It wouldn't look like it does today. I know that. And so anyhow, it just inspired me. Your story is amazing. And man, I just thank you so much for your time today.
I'm glad to be here with you, Jeremy. And I think, and Aaron, by just having this ministry, Ordinary Men, and pursuing it and doing it, that itself lays out a challenge for men. It's like, oh, look at Jeremy, look what he's doing. He's busy doing something, you know. I can look at that and say, oh man, what am I doing? I got to get busy. Because climbing mountains, that can be pretty selfish. Even if I'm taking someone with a disability, believe it or not, it can be very selfish. Am I doing it to honor the Lord and give him glory?
Well, you have. This book is all about it. Yeah.
I hope and pray so, but sometimes it can be purely self-driven. And so, you know, maybe you can get caught in that no matter what you do, but
that's right.
Just being a part of this ministry and encouraging other men, that presents a challenge, and you know, you're living up to it.
Yeah.
So I pray that I can.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right.
It's a lot of fun.
Aaron, any final words?
I would just say, if you haven't already, go get the summit, read the story. If you've been enjoying what we talked about today.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say that would help you out? Like, are you still speaking? Are you still?
Pray for me.
Is there a place somebody can go to have you come speak?
Yeah, if they can. If they're listening to this, just send Jeremy a note.
Okay.
And say, hey, you can come to my church. I'd love for him to share more, or my business or whatever. Yeah, that's great. HigherSummits.com is my defunct website that I need to get back up and running. But Eric at HigherSummits.com is my email. Send me a note. Even if it's not about that, just how I can pray for you.
Yeah, or reach out to us and we'll get you in contact with Eric. So once again, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, Aaron. Until next time, let's do this.